Well, I didn't mean you were a new politician, but you're a new MEP. Javier, please, you have the floor. Europe is not simply a beautiful idea, it is a historical need. If we analyze the history of humanity, well, at least the Western world, because China has a different history, we'll see that there's been an increase in in a shift from the center of gravity from the Fertile Crescent through Mesopotamia, through Egypt, then Rome, then through the Iberian Peninsula of Portugal and Spain. Then it shifted upwards to France and Great Britain, the North Atlantic of Europe. Then the transatlantism of World War One, where two main influence areas grew, which were the British and the US on both sides of the Atlantic. Now it's shifted further to the Pacific, the western coast of the United States, and the Asian side of the Pacific, from South Korea all the way to Malaysia, Indonesia, with the center of gravity in China. This is the new reality, and this is a world where the concentration of technology requires large spaces, where we cannot think in terms of a small village. And when we find a continent called China with incredible technological abilities, and technology is know-how, its progress, its hegemony, or at least the main protagonist in hegemony. If we manage for that main protagonist well, it's very clear that right now it's the world is being led by China and the US. We are still the main market in the world in Europe. So either we work together or we will become irrelevant. We are somewhat irrelevant, but when it comes to strategy and politics, but we are main protagonists in the economy. So we can play a decisive factor in Europe. And since we do this every day, it seems like it almost doesn't exist. Usually what becomes more usual becomes what's right, and what frustrates us becomes what's wrong. Now, since I was born in 1947, and since 2 years before my birth, we are seeing this unusual monster called peace. Europe has had a civil war since the crumbling of the Roman Empire, and now we're seeing wars on the periphery, specifically in areas where the EU is not present, which is why this subversive revolutionary reality of peace is one of the main components of the EU. And now I will go into this topic of citizenship. Unity is not only a beautiful utopia, an aim that we should all strive for. It is absolutely vital. We need peace, and we need to be active participants in peace. We have social, strategic, and monetary union. But there is a very clear question. Currently, Europe's unity is risky. And why risk? Because there are macro nationalisms and micro nationalisms. In the moments of crisis, in moments when we see a break of the continued well-being that we had been accustomed to, seeing that I live better than my father, my son lives better than me, and my grandson should live better than my son. But there's been a break in this chain because of something that we have allowed. And when I say we, I don't mean politicians, because at the end of the day, I realize that the political structure stems from the power structure, and the power structure stems from the economy, whether we like it or not. Now, the reality is that our economy is not fair, but it is productive. And it is now becoming the creative economy, the speculative economy, which doesn't create anything. It just transforms wealth into speculation and into income that is paid by citizens, while the benefits remain in the pockets of a few. And this is the history of our speculative economy, which has led to this large-scale crisis. A crisis which economists, whom I define as prophets of the past, they can always explain what happened, but they can never tell us what should happen. They have sat there passively, as have all the European governments throughout the continent, who saw that how that well-being was false and it was leading us into disaster. And this is what happened. So in those moments where trust in institutions falls apart, because these are institutions which have not reacted before this criminal threat, and I mean that, it's a crime against society when we have a speculative economy, because it leads to poverty for the majority and benefits for a minority. The social mass finds that the institutions which should be protecting citizens are useless. As a consequence of that crisis, there's a moral crisis. So not only is this an economic crisis, it also has macroeconomic and macrosocial components. It has led to distrust in institutions, a deep crisis that is ever greater. But we need to fill the void that's left behind. And a void is filled by anything that can give an alternative for the future. In the people, by our very nature, we're not fatalists. We always think that there is a solution. In Spain, for example, in 1898, the remainders of our empire collapsed. We lost Cuba, the Philippines, the Caroline and Mariana Islands. We were the main force in the Pacific, and we lost Puerto Rico. It was a romantic Wagnerian romanticism, which in Italy led to the Risorgimento and the Italian unity. It also led to the unity of Germany. In Spain, this became micro-nationalism in the Basque Country and in Catalonia. And this was a cultural nationalism, residual from a self-aggrandizing bourgeoisie which found the historical novels, historical ideas. In Catalonia, in the large bourgeoisie, those who went to the opera were those who were pro-Verdi and pro-Wagner. The pro-Verdis were liberals and the pro-Wagnerians were nationalists and Carlists. When there was a Verdi opera, then their opponents would say it was awful. And when there was a Wagner opera, those opponents said it was awful. So there was a rupture based on aesthetics. But then, because of the break of the project of Spain, the remainders of an imperial Spain, where the Catalan bourgeoisie and the Basque bourgeoisie had their greatest economic interests in the empire, we saw that those who financed volunteers that would go fight in Cuba and the Philippines against the independence, it was the Catalan and Basque bourgeoisie who financed them. No, why was there a rupture at the time? Because the project fell. And in order to fill that void, it can be filled with two concepts. One is supernatural, religion, and the other, more immediate, is the tribe, your family, your clan. And since that great family called Spain had failed, they thought of the micro-family, the myths of that old point of reference, what a prosperous Catalonia was, or a non-existent Basque country was, which is created by a republicanist called Sabino Alagaroidi. So it leads to the problem we have today. This micronationalism, sorry, you're going to have to finish. I will get to the point. Micronationalism is against citizenship because it means that citizens are part of a collective, a nation, to which a citizen must become a part of. So what I understand as a dialectic process of cultural creation in freedom, which is what citizenship should be. It means if I am not part of the objective values that is determined by an elite who define what the homeland is, then I am a sort of bastard. And in some cases I will be exposed, and in some cases I should be converted. In Catalonia, since they're more civilized, they convert people in the concept that those who are not part of that objective truth are bad citizens because we're bad patriots. And I will finish by saying patriotism is the refuge of miserable people, and the only homeland I believe in is the homeland of my fellow citizens who don't live only in my street or in my city or in my region. I am talking about Europe, which I believe in. Thank you.